Let's talk about Race Inc. and Cook Brothers Racing. I believe in full transparency, so this is going to be a little awakening for some of you that have been watching my videos for some time now. I used to live in Newport Beach, California, and when I did, I was under contract as a paid content creator for Race Inc., Cook Brothers Racing, to help them promote some of their newly released retro brands, meaning the 20, 24, 26-inch bikes, parts and components, and then the release of the Cook Brothers titanium bars, seat post, cranks, things like this, all these parts and pieces. So if you remember back, I used to build Race Inc. bikes periodically. I think I've built about 6 of them throughout that duration. I worked for them for about a year just helping get content out for them. They are great bikes. Here's the problem. Race Inc. and Cook Brothers, retro brand lines, in my opinion, are going away. They are going down the toilet. They are not on a pause. I think they're on their way out, and let's talk about why. Okay, Race Inc. and Cook Brothers are great brand names. And when I say that, it's because those companies back in the day were amazing. And they made very cool parts. They weren't as popular as some of the bigger brands like GT or some other ones. But they were still very well known in the race circuits. And their bikes were amazing. I mean, I have a Cook Brothers bike right there. Love that bike. Race Inc. bikes back then were very much like PK Rippers. They were aluminum, but they were round and not a flat oval on their frames. And I've done a video showing the similarities between a Race Inc. 20-inch and my PK Ripper 20-inch. So they shared a lot of commonalities. And then that's where it all kind of ends. After that era of bikes, a lot of these companies just kind of went defunct and sat and idle, if you will. And then came Toby Henderson. He started buying up all these brand names and had some really great ideas trying to relaunch the brands, if you will, during the peak of the retro bikes that started coming out. SE really brought these retro bikes back into the public eye, and that's a whole other video I can do and talk about. But other companies started jumping on board. Redline started making a retro bike. They made a 26-inch squareback. GT, the other GT, the one that's now on pause, the big corporate company of GT, also started doing some retro bikes. They made a 20-inch Performer, a 26-inch Performer, a 29-inch Performer, and some great parts. Their bikes kind of sucked. They were missing the mark. And I think that's really the nexus of this whole story is these companies, I feel like, lost touch with the roots and started a weird blend between retro and new school. And it didn't sit well with us Gen Xers because we want to relive the old school. So give us what we want. Stop blending new school crap with old school awesome. It doesn't work. We started getting like the new GT Performer, but with a 1 1/8 threadless fork. And we started getting it with bigger dropouts and 9-tooth rear sprockets. Crap like that doesn't fly for old school Gen X people like me. That's cool for new school people. And then Haro went and did the same thing. John Bolchins went over there and he said, let me build a bunch of new school bikes that look like old school and just confuse the hell out of everybody. Let me do Haro Masters with pegs on the back instead of frame standards that were built into the chainstay. He's like, let me do this. It's different because it's new. 14mm axles. Let me do all kinds of new school crap, but take an old school lineage for Haro or heritage for GT and just botch it. And it doesn't sit well with us. So they're not doing well either. What's going on with Race Inc.? Man, I got this from a good source. I'm also taking this from my own personal experience. And I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to be straight up. I'm going to tell you why Race Inc. failed and Cook Brothers never really got a chance. All right, I was there. I should get the shirt. I was there. I was there when Toby Henderson was taking his first truckload of racing bikes off the truck and putting them in the warehouse in Orange County. I drove right past it, being nosy back then, trying to get some content. I actually caught a clip of that and put it in a video. This is years ago. And then Race Inc., a part of the big umbrella of ABMX and Box and all of that, started selling some Race Inc. bikes, and they did pretty well because they are a sick looking frame. And you could do a lot with them in the big wheel market, which I'm also not a huge fan of, but I've made my share of 26ers and I made my share of Race Inc. 26ers. The look was there. They had it. The frame looked great. It was aluminum. It had great welds. They had good colors. So what went wrong? What went wrong is Toby's evolution through old school to new school BMX and creating box components and then trying to incorporate new school race technology with old school retro. It didn't work. It just started colliding and failing among the market of people that want to build custom old school retro BMX bikes. Because his bikes all had new school technology like 1 1/8 threadless forks, like V-brakes, like 14 millimeter or 20 millimeter dropouts, like just all this new school stuff that us old school guys, and especially if you're not a bike builder and you don't build a lot of bikes, that will all be alien to you and you won't know what you're looking at and you won't figure out why your 3/8 axles have a ton of play and won't even hardly sit inside the frame because the opening is so big on the dropouts. And then you're like, what the hell is this? Because that's what I said when I got my very first frame. This is before they had a solution to the problem. And what was the problem? Well, I'm going to show you the problem. Here it is right here on these 26-inch forks. Look at the size of that dropout. That's ridiculous. 3/8 axles probably fit in that hole, not that hole. And so for a solution, they came out with these ridiculous press washers to adapt down to a 3/8 axle that will fit inside that hole. Here's the problem with this, is half of this goes on one side, half goes on the other, and they press in the middle, leaving it damn near impossible to get that axle into those openings to begin with using these press washers. If you know, you know. If you've never done it, it's a little hard to explain. Let me take one of these apart. Okay, you would take half of that press washer, slide it over your 3/8 axles on both sides of your hub. Then try to slide it up into here, pressing it into the opening, which would then accommodate a 3/8 axle. The problem is, once you have one of these on both sides, you have to spread the forks apart in order to get these to clear the dropouts and then pop into the slot. An absolute nightmare if you've never done that. And that's not it. That's just the front of the bike. The back half of the bike was also an issue because the rear dropouts were completely gapped for a new school technology hollow axle that's currently being run on modern BMX bikes. Not a 3/8 axle found on 99.9% of retro bikes. They didn't know what to do, and panic was setting in because no one wanted to buy all these box components, overly sized hubs and axles for these bikes. So they had to come up with a quick fix, and I was there for this. The quick fix was a modified chain tensioner at the time, and I have that prototype sitting back here in a box. And they basically shaved stuff down, made it so it kind of worked. And I actually ran it on my 26-inch Batima build that I did, which I paid full price for. It's the only SE bike that I actually bought. And the fix for that prototype chain tensioner was Billet BMX Morgan was working on a chain tensioner specifically to accommodate the dropouts on the Race Inc. bike. But again, that's a temporary fix using a third-party company. And Morgan, you're a great guy with amazing products. And it would have been great, but Race Inc. wanted to do something different. Something they can make that you would need to buy from them in order to accommodate a 3/8 axle. Let's check that part out. So on top of your bike purchase, you can buy these $50 rear dropout pieces. It's a 2-piece part, slides over the outside of the dropout and the inside of the dropout, and then you can fit your 3/8 axle through that groove, then use a washer and your axle nut. But it's basically a shim or some sort of spacer that would bring down the size of the original dropout to a 3/8 axle size. But you would have to buy those also. Crazy. Okay, aside from those obvious issues, another one was trying to run a race team and trying to be successful with a retro line. And I think they did too many things at once. And back then, this was a partnership company between a Canadian citizen by the name of Mark Coate and an American racing legend, Toby Henderson. Together, they were building this company, and money was always an issue. Parts and pieces were made overseas, and getting those parts built, shipped, and then distributed was a money-guzzling event, as are most ventures like this. But where's the downfall? What happened? Well, the focus, I think, was more on race, and they probably should have never taken on the task of the retro line, because I think they started off on the wrong foot altogether. And they didn't market very well at all. And they weren't pushing their retro lineups. They would go to events like Frogtown, and they would bring 4 bikes. They would go to events like Dirty Fest, and I'd go by the tent, nobody there, and a couple bikes. But on the table, in front where you would see is a brand new school race bike at an old school BMX event. Again, pushing the wrong product to the wrong crowd. So the disconnect there was obvious. And it's a shame, because I did truly enjoy the brand Race Inc. Let's talk about Cook Brothers a little bit. I sat there with Toby. I saw the 3D printed versions of the Dogbone Cook Brothers cranks. I got the very first pair of those cranks, and I shared them to you on YouTube. I have one set right now on my Cook Brothers. You can't even find them anymore. They made such few amounts of them, and they're never going to make them again. They talked about making a 26-inch Cook Brothers Cruiser. I said I would pay full price for that. I want one as soon as you do it. Never happened. It was never built. Along with a lot of other things. Then they tried way overpriced handlebars and a seat post made of titanium. They were awesome. I did a video about them. But man, nobody's going to pay those prices for titanium. That's weight savings on modern race technology stuff. Us guys building retro bikes want some nice chrome handlebars. I don't care if they weigh ounces or 1.5 pounds. We're going for looks when we're building these retro bikes, not performance per se. So again, overpriced, wrong audience. They eventually came out with some Cook Brothers bars that are chrome, but a little too late, if you ask me. I think at that point, the decline of the company is already there. Toby saw the writing on the wall and left the company, leaving the Canadian basically as the main person in charge. And then the general manager, Art, tried to run it from California. Again, it was losing business, and Art wasn't pushing it very well. I think there was some contention between the Canadian and Art, and that's just my opinion based off my observations. And Race Inc. finally pulled from their California location, sent everything to, I believe, Indiana, and then I started to see sales. Sales. Everywhere I saw a Race Inc. bike on Planet BMX, or even on ABMXC, the Race Inc. website, all their stuff was on sale. To me as a business owner, that's suspicious. It's almost like they're trying to consolidate their stock. And boy, do I think I'm right. I even saw a frame at Planet for $149. That's probably what they paid for it, just trying to get rid of their bikes. Now you can't find them anywhere. If you even go to the Race Inc. website, they have one white 26-inch frame. Most of their bikes are sold out, a couple 29s left, but the 26s, 24s, 20s, all say sold out, and there is no mention of a restock. So this could be your opportunity or it could be your warning. It depends how you want to look at this video. Man, I thought you guys had my back. Where were you? I'm sitting over here with the craziest hair today and nobody said a word. They're just going to let this craziness stick out for the world to see. So we're going to tuck that back in and pick up wherever I left off. So Race Inc. is going down the toilet. Cook Brothers really never had a solid launch. Didn't make a single bike. Only made a couple components. And if you notice, you go over there to like their power discs or whatever, they're made for a 4-bolt. Their chain rings are a 4-bolt chain ring. What old school retro bike is running a 4-bolt chain ring? They're all 5-bolt. 5-bolt. So again, failed, missed the mark. Came out with some chain ring bolts that are too long, and if you use them on like a power disc with a chain ring, they're too loose. They won't tighten enough to tighten it down. Just stupid things like this didn't make any sense to me or probably anybody else. They came out of the Cook Brothers chain, oil slick. There are some oil slick bikes out there. That chain's got to be on the right bike to look nice. It's not going to be a mass sold chain because they should have just went with silver instead of an oil slick, because now it's got to be on the right bike to even look right. So that didn't make a lot of sense to me either. But Cook Brothers, I'm super sad. It never took off. I have a Cook Brothers here. I was hoping that that line would do something and make some really rad stuff that I could put on this bike. I saw renders for a stem. I saw renders for all kinds of really cool stuff that just never happened. And that's a shame. Race Inc., if you want a bike, here's your opportunity. Go snag whatever you can, wherever you can, because they're no longer going to be there. If you have one, maybe you hang on to it or maybe you dump it. I don't know. It's up to you. I got rid of all my Race Inc. stuff. All I have left right now is a pair of forks left over. I don't even know what I'm going to do with those. Do I get a Race Inc. frame and build another Race Inc. bike? At this point, probably not. That really doesn't excite me a whole lot. I'm kind of backing away from that, if you will, and I have for quite a while. And I have no apologies for it. I enjoyed marketing for Race Inc., putting their stuff out there, trying to share with my followers and subscribers like you. So I thought it was important that we end that story by letting you know that I only did that for a year. For the last 2 years, I've had no association whatsoever to Race Inc., Cook Brothers, Box, any of those companies under that umbrella. I have no affiliation to them or sponsorship from them in any way whatsoever. This video is just me telling you that those companies, without them publicly acknowledging it yet, seem to be done. That ship has sailed. I think that's happening across the board. These companies like Redline stopped making the Squareback. GT, we know what happened there. Everything's on pause. We know what that means. All these other companies like Haro totally suck at making retro bikes. Those aren't retro bikes. They are a new school bike with a similar look to a retro bike. So you're missing the mark. The only company that's kind of hitting the mark right now is Mongoose, to be perfectly honest with you. With their release of the Super Goose and the FS1, a lot of you will be like, the parts. Big freaking deal. Go buy that bike, which is an awesome platform, and then customize it with the parts you want and stop crying about it. Because the frame, fork, bars are absolutely killer, just like the old days. Same exact dimensions, same exact everything. But you go ahead and put your parts on it and make it your bike just like you did in the 80s. Okay, quick little update on some upcoming builds. I've pretty much bought all the parts for this build and they are on their way. So a red and certain color GT coming very soon. And then my GT Pro World Tour. Literally every single part is here except the frame and forks. So, Craig, where are you at? Supposed to be done probably today and should be getting shipped out, but I'm still gonna have to powder coat it, but man, we got all the parts there. One last company that I didn't mention, I probably wasn't going to, but since I'm gone down that road already, let's talk about Hutch with the release of their Trick Stars. Again, another John Bolton's project where he jumped in and said, let me make a brand new school bike and put Trick Star on it and give it some similarities. It is nothing like the old school Trick Star whatsoever. It's got pegs only, no frame standers. It's got new school technology, 1 1/8 threadless forks. Literally everything about it, the size of the sprocket, everything is new school, and they made it old school by putting the same name on there. Nothing about that Trick Star is like the original Trick Star. There are people that are pretty PO'd about that. They got one and went, what the heck is this? The chrome quality isn't what it was back in the 80s. The bike doesn't look at all like it did back in the 80s. The parts and components aren't at all the same or even barely mimic what was once a very rad bike. To me, now it's just another new school bike. I have no intention on jumping on that bandwagon and buying the new Hutch Trick Star. People have always asked me, are you gonna buy this, are you gonna buy that? I don't care for the new Haros. I don't care for the new Trick Stars. The same person, ironically, is behind that. And that is what it is. The guy is just needs to make a paycheck. He's out there. It's a job for him. He doesn't have the connection to the old school bikes like some of us do. But I'm going to set it straight. I don't work for them. I don't care. This is an opinion piece. And my opinion is I don't want anything to do with those bikes. The Redline Castan bikes, now that I've seen one in person at Justin's house, the BMX basement, that's quality. The problem is quantity and price with those bikes. They're very few and hard to find parts that are very, very expensive. The quality's there when they get it right. They've had some growing pains along the way, but everything's very expensive. And when they start selling a full complete RL20, let me know and I'll try to have $1 million to buy one. All right, there you have it. Now you know the down and dirty about what's happening at Race Inc. No one else has dropped this information yet because nothing has quite become official. No representative from Race Inc., aka Mark Coate from Canada, has come out and publicly said, I'm trashing the company, I'm done with it, I'm pulling the plug. Because I believe they're just trying to quietly liquidate, get rid of everything, and then bow out without becoming a public spectacle of, I failed at doing what I thought I could do. It happens all the time. I'm not calling them any names or pointing any fingers. Not all businesses succeed. I think maybe your ambitions were high, your ability was low, and it didn't pan out. So next time, if anyone plans on making a retro line using a very cool old school name like a Race Inc. or a Cook Brothers, do it right. Do it like we did in the old days. Give us old school retro guys what we want. We want 1-inch threaded forks. We want side pull brakes. We want American bottom brackets. Stop with all the madness. Torker, you did it too. So I know you're correcting these things, but you're still blending a lot of new school using old school names. And it's not that I can do anything about it. It's not my company. It's yours to do with what you want, but I'm just telling you, I think you'd sell a lot more to a lot more collectors and builders if you made them pay more respect to the old school bikes. They don't need to have an 18-inch top tube. You can put a 21-inch top tube so us older, bigger guys can still ride them. But we still want that feeling, that nostalgia we had when we were 14. I don't want V-brakes and Euro bottom brackets and threadless stems and whatever. I want the feel, the look, the smell of the 80s BMX bikes and bike shops that we all loved and cherished as kids. All right, subscribers and watchers, thank you so much for watching this. If you want a hat, you want a shirt, you want a hoodie, you want some stickers, you want a hat for your wife, a shirt for your kid, RADBMXBUILDS.com. We got some great builds coming, a lot more lighter content coming. I just needed to break this news, get it out to you. And hopefully now you know, if you're like, hey, I'll buy this later, it might not be there. So if you want one of those parts or bikes now, don't wait. If you want to, let them go on by down the road like so many other brands have and just watch it go off into the sunset, so be it. It's your life, your bikes, but hey, get out there and ride them. And as always, stay rad.